will put her bio in the chat group. And as Rabia puts her face on the screen, I would like to welcome Rapelang. And she will be sharing with us a little bit about herself. Sure. Her bio speaks about, you know, she had her first startup when she was in the university. So of course, we're talking about taking up space. We're talking about as a woman and technology, how do we, what do we do with this? You know, we sometimes feel that we have to compete, but here's definitely a woman that doesn't need to compete with anyone. She's done inroads, she's broken ground already. And Rapelang, welcome.
Thank you so much, Renee. Hi, everyone.
And I really wanted to please just introduce yourself to the ladies, and we're just going to have a little chat. I really want to get into hearing from your heart. Yeah, so if you want to just go ahead.
How do I introduce myself? So I would say that I'm a technology entrepreneur is how I identify myself mostly. And that's because I guess I've been on this road for quite a while. I started my first startup after UCT in 2006, and that was called Yeigo. And I've been on that journey since, basically building tech startups and doing cool stuff in tech. I guess for me, I came to a point where I realized or believed that there's lots of, you know, solutions to fix stuff out there, and we know how to solve problems for 10 people, for 30 people, and that's what, you know, elite schools do and highly resourced environments do. But for me, I was wondering, with the continent that it is now, with the huge numbers of young people, unless we actually apply technology to a lot of the things that we think about, we won't be able to do something that actually makes a dent, that really changes the lives of millions or hundreds of millions of people. So I started this little baby called Rekindle to help me start on that journey to try figure out how we use technology to change how quickly we can skill people, capacitate people, so that, you know, prosperity isn't a lottery ticket that's for the lucky few. How can it be more evenly distributed, kind of thing? Yeah, I guess that's what I do today. And then I do a lot of conversations like this to wonderful people like you, especially in Women's Month. Then I'm part of a number of networks like the World Economic Forum and the like, and that gives me a lot of good ideas and insights into what the rest of the world is thinking. And I love to read, I love to eat and have good wine.
I love it. You know, I actually wanted to ask you quite a personal question, like, what's your routine in the morning? You know, like how do you get your day started? Of course, you know, with so many conversations happening and so many things doing, I'm really curious, like, what do you do to get yourself going?
Sure. You know, COVID has changed a few things. So beginning of Monday, I've decided to take my life back because I was gaining so much weight, and I've decided, you know, no alcohol or wine for the next month. And I'm waking up at 6:30 every morning now to exercise, and I'll do a mix of running, Pilates, or yoga. And I'm committed to doing it for the next month so I can get my stability and mental clarity back. And then I try to sort of be at and then afterwards I will try to do some meditating. So I've done a whole lot of programs that have sort of taught me different ways to meditate. And I enjoy exploring a lot of that stuff, sort of Eastern philosophy stuff. And then I try to be at my desk, you know, by about 8:30-ish. I use most of my mornings to do like creative work. So if I have to produce a document or a proposal or come up with some ideas, I try to do all my creative work in the morning, because that's when I have the most energy. And I know that like by lunchtime, you know, I'm using like half my brain, and I try to do calls and everything in the afternoon, because you know how all of these Zoom calls are during the day, like you need 10% of your brain to function. So I'm like, let me push that stuff that I can do like with half my energy into the afternoon and try and do most of my creative work in the morning. And then in the evening, I try to stop working around 6:30-ish. and have supper, so that I have supper earlier and not like 8 o'clock. And my boyfriend also insists on that because he's also trying to lose weight. So we're trying to eat earlier and earlier. And I'll watch some TV. Gomorrah and Queen are my things to help my brain sort of switch off and chill. It's my thing now. And the other stuff I'll watch at the moment, I've enjoyed For Life. I watched The Resident quite a bit. There isn't much now showing. I liked Little Fires Everywhere with Kerry Washington and Reese Witherspoon. So I definitely need my brain sort of downtime. And then I'll try to be in bed by 9:30ish, do a little bit of reading and pass out in the process. That's my day.
Wow, it still sounds jam-packed there. So just, there's quite a few questions in the chat box that we'll get to now, because I think the ladies are dying to ask you some stuff. But, you know, because of course you've been an early adopter, you know, when it comes to technology. Firstly, what made you choose that path? Of course you were at university, so did that actually have an influence, or was it something deep inside of you? And then also tell us about, like, do you have any regrets, you know, over the last couple of years? Is it 15, 16 years?
Yeah, a long time, too old.
You know, a long time. So, yeah.
Sure. So I didn't get into technology because there was something in me per se, but towards the end of high school, I had really been doing a lot of introspection and thinking around what the hell is this life thing about? And what am I doing? I'm tired of sort of doing these things I don't quite understand and playing these systems called primary school and secondary school. And now I'm supposed to go into something else called university and then get a job. So I was really getting disengaged and phased out by the whole life thing. And I wanted to take a gap year. But as many of you know, with Black parents, these are not options. And to university, I was to go. No options there. And my older brother was at UCT at the time. He was doing accounting and stuff. So I said, look, Mom and Dad said I have to go to university. So help me pick something. As long as it's not accounting or actuarial science, I'm looking for a break from life kind of thing. And he probably maliciously chose business science, computer science. And that's what I ended up registering for. I'd never really done coding or anything like that. And the first lesson was super scary because I'd never seen code or anything. And there were all this writing on the wall. It was a terrible few months. And when I realized my brother was really playing games with me, I started to look around and see what else can I switch to? Should I switch to like accounting or marketing or organizational psychology or the other stuff that UCT had in the commerce faculty? And by the end of the year, I had actually decided to stay because I felt that a lot of these other subjects, I was going to like economics and accounting. I have to spend all this time reading and reviewing stuff that all these old people that I don't know about had written. And I was just tired of all of that. And I was like, with computer science, you're allowed to actually come up with ideas and build something. Yeah. And then it's in reality and people can use it. And I guess I had never been exposed to that creative element in school or academia. So I thought this thing is ridiculously hard, but I'm gonna stick with it because it's different. And I feel like it helps me get out of the system to be able to do my own stuff. Whereas the other stuff, I was thinking, sure, if I want to do ecos, I have to now, go do a master's and spend years in a bank to prove that I'm credible. If I do accounting, it's 3 years after that. So I did all these calculations and I'm like, this is the fastest way out of the system because I'm done. And that's kind of how I got on the road. And in the end, I stuck with it because of its creative potential. And for me, that's probably the thing that's kept me in for as long as this time, right? And, like you said, the journey's been long in terms of regrets. I guess I regret the missed friendships and relationships. So because I've been a workaholic for the longest of time, I guess I know that there's relationships I wasn't open to or birthdays I just never got to because I was just at my desk. And people that I should have remembered, but I haven't. And these are, I think, the deeper personal costs that I don't think I've been able to quantify yet, but I think is quite significant. And I don't think I regret other things, but I mean, there's definitely been other sacrifices. But for me, that's probably the thing that, sits in the back of my mind in terms of, was that a smart move?
Thank you. Wow, that's been amazing. I think for many of us, and especially as entrepreneurs, with you talking about the sacrifices that you make and actually missing the birthdays, I think for many of us that just, rings a bell, and the guilt that goes with it. And, like missing out on certain things because, and actually being called a workaholic, by friends and families, and everybody's like, you're working again. But thank you so much for that.
Again, yep.
I'm just going to pull some of the questions. I just scrolled right up. Let me just find you. Okay.
Yes. I saw a question about what is the biggest challenge being in the digital domain.
Yeah.
Should I go that one?
Yes, please.
The biggest challenge, I think it's changed over the years. Initially, I think when I was younger, it was tricky because, there weren't other people that looked like me. So while it's easy for sort of, a white guy to fall into the industry and he'll have points of reference or people that are like him who, maybe have similar aspirations and traveled a similar journey. So they can see sort of their success path in a way. But for me, I had to do a lot more of that self-reflection work. I had to find my own internal compass because I wasn't going to be validated by the external system. I wasn't going to be validated by the people I saw in the industry or that were around me. And I had to get to that place where I was okay validating myself. And I think that was a very important lesson for me to learn earlier on, because I think when I connect with a lot of my peers now, they're waiting for someone to say it's okay. They're waiting for someone to say, yes, you can speak now. Yes, you can do that task or that project. And I have long, left that mindset, and I have to be told to not do something and I'll be like, oh, oops, sorry. And move on. But I don't have to wait for the permission or the approval. And it comes for, because I think even being in a corporate environment indoctrinates people to defer to an authority or to defer to their superior to make a decision. And I think that stopped me sort of being in a lull. The other sort of challenge later on, I think, for me is it's hard. It's always hard to sell as an entrepreneur and build your business and get clients. But what's always bizarre for me is just how hard it is for people to believe in the credibility of technology products that are not developed by sort of a white male in the room. And it's always quite funny because one time I had this sort of new intern. He was literally his first day on the job, a young Indian guy. And we're going to a client together and I do the presentation. I'm the one leading the presentation. And, towards the end, they start asking questions and they direct the questions to him. And obviously he doesn't know the answers. And it's not like he presented. I did the entire presentation. And I keep having to jump in and save this little guy because they're assuming because he's the Indian guy, he knows everything. And I just had to learn to accept that people have some, stereotypes that are going to take a while. And if it requires me to have a white man in the room for you to believe that it works, heck, whatever, I'll move on from that. It's your journey, not mine. Yeah.
I love it. Oh my goodness, I got so many good nuggets. Someone is also asking, how do they get access to Rekindle Learning?
Yeah, so with Rekindle Learning, we focused a lot more on the B2B space. So we sell to corporates and to universities, and we haven't done a lot of direct consumer. It's mainly because it's a tougher business model to go direct to consumer. And in order for us to, because I've bootstrapped the business mainly. So it requires you to get bigger enterprise deals. And that's where our focus has been in financial services and telcos and 2 universities we work with. By the end of the year, though, we we will be having a direct to public application and apps that people can use. And then our website and stuff will function more directly for the consumer. But that really just hasn't been a focus right now because it couldn't carry our development costs. But we're getting to that. We'll get to that in the future.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Kusal was asking, who has been your mentor throughout your journey and what did they teach you?
Shoo. So this mentor thing, guys, you know, when we started in 2006, there wasn't things like mentors. You just worked. You sat on Google and you found your information. If you went to a conference and someone knew something, you would go and ask them the question and get your answer and move on. So I didn't grow up in a context of mentors and seeking mentors specifically. So it's actually very hard for me to relate to that need now because it certainly wasn't fashionable when I started my business. So I would say that, and I still believe this to the largest degree, that my greatest mentorship came from reading books. I read the journeys and biographies of entrepreneurs. I read about how you build technology businesses. I read, you know, a lot of the books from the Silicon Valley investors and entrepreneurs just to see how they think, to see how they make their decisions. And I still rely on reading for my deepest insights. And every now and again, you know, I'll happen to bump into someone or into a conversation that I think is great. And I guess I don't ask for mentorship. I'll just ask you the question. So you said X and Y. How would I apply it in this situation? So I don't call it mentorship, but I guess that's what it is. And that's what I understand more than a formal mentorship, because I actually worry a lot of the time when people come and ask me for mentorship, because I get the sense that they want to abdicate the responsibility of having to think for themselves and make their own decisions and make their life work by having coffee or whatever. Because the reality is that there's very little that I can give you in an hour or 30 minutes that will fundamentally change you. There's so much more you would get out of a book and reading. So for me, I really still urge that you can build expertise and insight into so many things today. And it's right at your fingertips. And I reach out to people based on the specific need. So if I want someone to give me insight on how do I structure employee share schemes, I'm part of a business network and they've got various people, experts I tap into, and I go to that person to ask that question. But it's not a formal mentorship relationship, if you see what I mean. I think that for me, the deepest form of mentors I've had is my parents. And just in the sense that they've taught me what hard work is, they've taught me that you just put your head down and keep going. And they do that to this day. They're approaching their 70s, but they still wake up at 6 a.m. to exercise. They still work long days, harder than I do. It's actually quite terrifying. And whenever I've got something that's disturbing me, I guess when I'm having supper with my parents, I'll discuss it with them, and they are open-minded enough, honest enough that, you know, we can unpack and discuss, and that moral support that I need at that point. So I guess I rely a lot on my parents for that.
Thank you. I'll take two more questions. I see there's quite a few coming in. What advice would you give a young woman? This is from Emily. She's from our Namibia office. So she's asking, and what advice would you give a young woman who's wanting to kickstart her business? And maybe just some of the pros and cons about starting your own business.
Yeah, so this is a long conversation, but how do I get to it? So I think it's important that I think we differentiate between I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to have a passion. I have a passion for something. My question is always, what is the problem you want to solve? And how have you figured out a way to solve it that would be easier or better than what already exists? So in another way to put that question is, instead of asking yourself, what is the value proposition? Ask yourself, what constraints am I removing in the market? And that's a lot clearer. So for example, when, you know, the T Ford cars came out way back then, in the early 1900s, etc. The constraint at the time was that because people were on foot or on horses, they could only move at 5 kilometers an hour. Come mod cars, and for every ordinary man, you can now move at 35 kilometers an hour. And that was the constraint that was removed. With Rekindle Learning, typically training, is either done in person, or traditional e-learning still required you to have lots of reading, slides and training manuals online, and it wasn't really changing what happened. So for us, the constraint we're removing is how to make learning as accessible as your social media. So the same way you would be lying in your bed, checking your emails, checking your Instagram, could you do a constructive piece of learning in a couple of minutes? So how do we remove the constraint of learning so that it's not this big modular thing that you've got to do in 2 days or in a whole afternoon to actually get some learning done? So I think that's a really important question to sort of ask yourself, and make sure that you are really aligning with what customers are going to need. I worry that a lot of the time people start a business because it's noble and it's got good intentions, and that really doesn't take you far. The market is not going to reward your nobility. Solving a customer problem is what keeps you money coming in so that you can keep working on the problem. It's not that Rekindle Learning's ambitions are not noble, but if we don't have a sustainable business model, we'll die anyway. So that nobility goes to squat. So you've got to really make sure that you are zoning in on that question. The other big thing I would sort of say is that a lot of the time, the things people overlook in an idea is how are you going to find and communicate and market to your customers? We all say that Cape Town is big, or Africa is 1 billion people, but where do you find these 1 billion people? Like, tell me where you're going to find them and see them. So you've got to really think about your channels to market. If you're going to go through Stockfels or something, are you already part of a Stockfel network? How are you going to get in touch with the other ones? You've got to actually visualize how you're going to find and speak to these customers. The other question is, how are you going to collect money and payment? How are you going to deliver the physical goods or digital goods? In what manner is that going to be in? And these are the, not sexy questions, but too many people focus on, the beauty of the idea and don't answer those big questions. Pros and cons. The pros is, I've been able to spend most of my life deciding how I spend my time and what problems and things I want to channel my attention to. And for me, being able to decide how I spend my time and what I give my attention to is what I wanted coming out of university, because I was so tired of playing the system. And for me, that's the epitome of success. And the more I can do that, for me, the happier I am. So the extent that I can do that without social or financial pressure, for me, means I am more and more closer to that. So one day when I'm actually only doing work that I love and I actually don't need the money, then great. But this is a journey kind of thing, but I try to protect that, and that's what entrepreneurship has given me. The cons are, unpredictable financial outcomes. So 1 year is all good. Next year, there's nothing for months in your bank account. You're paying other people before you pay yourself. People think that when you start a business, you become the boss. But many times I feel like I'm working for my employees, not necessarily for me. So you've got to really believe and love what you're doing, because it actually takes on a much heavier load than if you were, working in a corporate. And it's taxing emotionally, psychologically, mentally. Working and preserving your mental health is something you've got to actively do. I'm a big fan of therapists, coaches. In Cape Town, there's like every alternative health kind of medicine type person. And that's lots of fun, because I love learning about myself. I love being aware of the things that derail me and how I correct myself and stuff. And that's why I'm a big fan of a lot of the meditation stuff coming out of the East. And that mental health thing you've got to proactively work at, because it's a greater threat when you take on big challenges.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. Rapelang, you know, this has been so inspiring. I've been asking the ladies in our private chat, and they all like, no, we should continue. You know, it's like it's really good. But thank you so much. And I'm just going to read just some of the comments. They definitely love your statement about reading as a mentor. I think that is so profound, you know. And of course, the mentor tag gets thrown around so frequently and easily nowadays. They're saying you being a realness at its best, amazing, great perspective on mentorship. Ladies really learned a lot from that. They're loving your energy and again your mentorship perspective. Yeah, so thank you so much, Rapelang. Ladies, I think we have your Twitter handle.
Yes,
somewhere.
But I think you spelled my name incorrectly. So it's Rapela.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So
yeah, okay. We will change that. Yeah. But we'll definitely put that up. But thank you so much. It was really amazing. You are so beautiful and you look so energetic and happy. And I think, you know, that's really rubbing off on all of us. We all need this positive energy during this time. So thank you so much.
Sure. Have a good evening, guys.
Thank you.